Today we're going to tackle a Leslie Matchbox you've seen on some other channels, but this one is going to bring its own bag of problems with it. Don't go away. Hey everybody, it's Paul from Fat Guy Productions, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And today indeed we're going to be tackling a Leslie Matchbox. You've seen it on other channels. It's a pretty popular Matchbox. I personally love the thing. It's the Alvis Stalwart BP Explorer. But unlike some of the other ones that you've seen out there, this one is going to bring its own set of problems with it. So, let's dive right in. Okay, here we go again. Today we're going to be working on this Alvis Stalwart BP Exploration vehicle. You've seen this before. It's a really popular casting because it was a lot of fun for the kids to play with. I gotta admit that I kind of like screwing around with it. And you've seen it done on other channels, but mine's got a few additional challenges to it, so we're going to do it, and it should be a lot of fun. So generally speaking, the casting's in pretty good shape. You see it's got no wheels, or tires actually, so that's going to be one of the issues. It doesn't have the canopy cover for it. That's going to be one of the other issues. I don't have a replacement windshield, and there is a tiny crack in it, but as deep inset as they are, I'm not going to worry about it. Now here's my solution to the tires. I went ahead and used Tinkercad and my 3D resin printer, and I printed a ton off. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and begin this project the same way we do everybody else's, and we're going to go ahead and take this apart. This is held together by just one single rivet and a tab at the front, and you know, this is a really great one. It's got a nice flat surface, so it sits flat on the table, and true to Matchbox's post, it's got a nice dimple in it, so it'll hold a normal drill bit, and it makes drilling this out pretty easy, actually. Alright, so we've done the drilling, and still needed a little extra persuasion, which we provide with this small flathead screwdriver, and we get that gratifying pop, and now we can see what we have going on here. Alright, the base is pretty typical, just normal Hot Wheel axles on hubs. No problem there. Nothing, you know, I'm surprised. I thought there'd be a little suspension thing in here, but there isn't. And that's because it's here, which is the weirdest configuration I've seen. Look at this. This is the window glass and the suspension unit all in one piece to make this kind of weird monstrosity. And there you can see the little crack in it. I don't think I'm going to worry about that so much. And but boy, yeah, this is an odd looking piece, really. Very cool. All right, we'll put that to the side. We'll take a look at the body. We've got a good deep long post, no problems there. And the body's in pretty good shape. Decals have got to go, but I think I'm going to make my own decals on this model. Boy, I'll tell you what, the more I do it this way, the more I enjoy the warm liquid goo phase. First, it's fun to be able to say that. Second of all, it's really super convenient to just plop these things in there and forget it. And so I really like that. I do have a casting coming up soon, where I'm actually going to have to brush apply the stripper, and I'll explain why in that video. But yeah, I really love this jar here. This is fantastic. Makes it so much easier. All right, body's in. Now we can go ahead and turn our attention to the base and get it ready so we can get it in the stripper too. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get these hubs and axles off. And for that, these are pretty short. Too short for my liking, so instead of grinding away the ends, I'm going to use my flat-sided pliers. I'm just going to go around squeezing the flared out end until it's flat enough that I can get the hub off and get the axles out. So I just give it a good squeeze, rotate a little bit, squeeze, rotate a little bit, squeeze. You get the picture. Once I've squeezed the flared out end down enough, the hub will come off, the axle will slide right out, and we can go ahead and move on with our restoration. Okay, so with all the axles and hubs off the base, it's time for the base to join the body. In you go, little fella. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I've pulled the base and the body out of the stripper, and I've taken them to the sink and I've given them a good wash and brush, and here's what we have. They came out pretty good, and I'm happy with the way they're looking, and so we can just do a little prep work, and then we can get them over to the paint booth. As always, I'll start with my brass bristle brush. Again, I've explained 1,000 times, and I'm going to explain one more time that this isn't a huge step, but what it does is it removes any last little flecks of paint that might be hanging on, and it kind of equalizes the surface all across the entire body, so I can kind of get a good, fair, equal look at it. And this will allow me to make a plan for how I want to move forward with it. If you don't already have some picks, run to Harbor Freight and pick some up. They're really, really cheap, and they're invaluable for doing this hobby. Here in the bed, there is a paint in the nooks and crannies that just doesn't want to come off. The brush can't get in to get to them, so we break out the dental pick. So just make sure you go and get yourself a set. They're really cheap, and you'll never look back if you have them. Okay, so everything's cleaned up, and we're just kind of looking to see how well it will go back together. And something that Lee has been doing a lot of, he's really cleaning up the edges of his posts. They can sometimes have a lot of extra material on it, and it can make it really difficult to snap these things back together. So I'm going to just bust out my little file, and I'm going to file around the edge of the post to make sure that this is going to go back together really nicely. And I'm going to get all that done and kind of flatten it out a little bit before we go ahead and drill it. Okay, so we have a nice deep post. We don't have to worry about that, but it is kind of narrow, so we really want to be careful here. And we're going to go ahead and drill this post out so that we can get it tapped and ready to take a screw, because you know we do have to put this thing back together at some point in time. And trust me, you know, you can use epoxy. It sucks. I hate it. Okay, if I never epoxy a car back together again, it will be too soon. So anyhow, we're going to drill that post out, and again, it's not so difficult because this car just sits down on my table nice and flat. Works out great. Now, if you saw my video on the Ferrari, the Hot Wheel Redline Ferrari, you saw me using Brightvision's new little tap handle, and I really liked it, so I'm trying to give it a really good fair test, and so I'm going to use it for a while. And here's the second use of it. I did add in oiling the post before tapping, and again, I'm just using this nice light little post that makes it so easy for you to handle it. You know, you're not having to fight against gravity and the weight of the handle. Look at that. It's just basically already held in there by itself. I mean, like a half a turn, and it's in there. And so I don't feel constantly like I have to worry about it pulling out and damaging the work that I've done already. So I turn it in a little bit, then I'll back it out a little bit, then I'll turn it in, back it out, and you know, I'm always careful so I don't overdo it, so I don't break the tap in the hole, you know. But this handle is really a good idea. It might not be the kind of thing you're used to, but trust me, so far I'm really liking it. I'm going to do an entire review on this handle after I've used it several times, but so far in car number 2, I'm really enjoying the way this thing works. Okay, so with the hole tapped out, we can go ahead and put one of our screws in, and here what we're doing is we're just making sure it threads in properly. We're making sure it goes deep enough, and then if you want, you can just leave it in the hole to keep the hole clean while we do the rest of the car. It's not a problem. Yeah, redoing this car is fairly straightforward. There's not a lot to it. Take it apart, strip it, repaint it, okay? Really, that's the essentials. All the extra stuff is going to be coming into the detail painting, dealing with the tires, and the cover. So here we are at the paint booth. I am just going to use some Tamiya X2 white. It always gives a really nice matchboxy kind of glossy finish. Not too shiny, but just the right amount of shine. So I really love the Tamiya paints for doing my matchboxes, unless I'm trying to turn them into like a custom or something. Again, I thin them down with the X20 thinner, and then I always add a little of my self-leveling thinner to make sure that the paint will end up flowing out nice and smooth. And we're going to get a great view of what I'm talking about with that on this model itself. At least I hope you'll be able to see it. It's a little tough on the white, but I think you'll be able to get the idea. So let's get the paint mixed up, get it in the airbrush, and let's get some paint on this thing. Okay, I virtually always lay the paint down the exact same way. I start with a tack coat to the point where you can barely see any kind of color on the vehicle at all. Let that dry up for a minute or two. Then I'll start putting on a couple medium coats where you can actually see the color laying down pretty good, but you know, it's a fairly dry base coat. And then I'll wrap it all up with some really nice wet coats, being careful to see the paint lay down so that I don't over apply it and get runs, and yet I still get a really nice glossy, smooth, wet coat. I'm trying to become a really big proponent of PPE, or personal protective equipment. Wear your mask, please. Use a booth. Protect yourself. Your health isn't worth any of this stuff, so wear something, okay? And give yourself a little bit of protection. Okay, we're going to look at the paint here really carefully. Try and look and see it's a little bumpy. There's a little bit of orange peel in that. But otherwise, other than that, it's a very glossy and smooth finish. But you do see on the side panels just a little bit of a lumpiness. Okay, see that right there? Can you see it perfectly right there? I'm going to show you this after it's all cured and dried. Remember what it looks like here, and then when we see it again later. And that's what the leveling thinner will do for you. Okay? If I get just that close, as it dries and cures, it's going to soften and flatten out and get rid of all that for us. Okay, look now. Can you see it now? Sorry about this is all being handheld. I'm trying to find a view where you can see it, but look how smooth it is now. This is after it has sat, it's cured, it's fully dried. Now can you see the bumpiness in it? No, not really, right? See how it's smoothed out over the time? That is why you use Mr. Color's self-leveling thinner. Look at that. Okay, it's all smoothed out. And so even if you're just a tiny bit off in your painting, it's going to give you a much better result. Now, the one thing to remember with this is it does, look right there, there's a good side. Now, you do see texture in there, but that's in the casting. Okay, those are, play divots from the casting itself, okay? The paint itself is smooth. See how flat it is? So just remember that leveling thinner is an important step. So I found some great decal paper for a laser printer from a company called Sunny Scopa. I've talked about this before, and I'll put a link down below for the paper. And so basically any decals I need that have a white backing, I can make myself. Unless it's something I can't cut out well. If it's too detailed of a cutout, that could be a problem. But this is just a couple big squares that say BP Exploration on it. So I went ahead and printed these on my laser printer after taking some measurements. And I'm just using my standard decaling procedures to put it down. Dip the decal in a little bit of warm water. Let it sit. Moisten the side of the vehicle. Slide the decal into position. And then I'm going to use a setting solution. Going to use a little microsol. Now's a good time to explain the difference between some of these solutions. You have microset, and microset will help a decal stick to a model. So if you're having a set of decals where they're not sticking down very good, you can use a little microset, and that will help it adhere to the model. Microsol is a softening agent which will help the decal conform to the shape of the body. And then finally there's a Solvaset by Walthers. And Solvaset is essentially the same thing as Microsol. It's a softening agent that will allow the decal to form and conform to all the details of the body. But it's what we call hotter, meaning it's more aggressive and it will soften your decal more. In fact, you put it on and leave it sit, come back in 20 minutes, your decal is going to look terrible. It's probably going to be all wrinkly and crinkly, and that is the Walthers doing its thing. It's going to soften the decal, it's going to wrinkle up and stuff, it's going to kind of settle into the grooves, and as it dries out, it should smooth flat again. It can be quite startling the first time it happens, so just be warned. Now, you've seen me use panel lining fluids before, and I usually use the black panel lining fluid. And I did use some black here for the vent grates down in the bottom, the base part. But for around the hatches and all the detail in the white surfaces, I'm actually using a gray panel lining fluid, because the black just stands out in my mind too much against that white paint, and it looks unrealistic. The gray is so subtle that you almost don't really notice it, but as you look at the model, you just realize that there's something well done about it. So I'm using, I believe this is, they make two grays, and I can't see the bottle in the video anymore, and I don't remember which one I chose, but I believe I chose the darker of the two gray fluids. And basically I'm just dotting it around the hatches and the roof, and around any kind of little running parts or details, stuff like that, to really add some life to it. Now, I don't have to be too careful about it, and here's a little tip for you. I've painted the car with an acrylic. The panel liner is an enamel. And so after I put the panel liner on it, I can let it dry up a little bit, and I can take a cotton swab moistened in some enamel thinner, and I can lightly buff off the extra panel liner and clean up any areas that I don't like the way they look. The enamel thinner won't really attack the acrylic paint. And so that's a wonderful tip for you to, if you're putting the panel liner down, you don't need to worry about being so perfect, because you can always come back and lightly rub it off using some enamel thinner and a paper towel or a cotton bud. Okay, so the windows on this thing are very deep and inset and small. And so I'm really not going to worry about the crack in this. So all I really have done with the glass is I just kind of cleaned it off, let it dry, and now I'm going to go ahead and just dip the window part of it into the gauzy and put it in my little onion saver to dry. And it should end up looking pretty nice inside of there. And you know, if you study it really hard, you'll probably be able to see the crack. But it's going to be so minor, it's really not anything that I'm going to worry about here. Always remember to wick away the excess. You don't want all these big puddles forming down at the base of your glass. It can change the dimensions of it. It can look weird. Just, it's not something you want. And again, also remember, you don't have to use gauzy if you don't want to. A little Pledge floor care will go a long way to making this glass look amazing. Okay, so here I am tossing the axles and wheels into a little bit of water, and I'm going to use a toothbrush, a little bit of water, and a little bit of super clean to clean these all up and make sure they're looking right. I briefly thought about painting them because I thought white wheels on this would look nice, but you know, I'm not trying to go full custom here, so I decided not to do that, but you know, I still think it would look pretty nice. Okay, the wheels and axles are ready, so we can go ahead and start threading them back through the base. Once I have them in, I'll put the opposing hub onto the axle, and then when we're done with all that, we can run this down to the garage and the drill press, and we'll use Marty's method to round over the end of the axles and lock this all back together. So when making these resin wheels, the dimension is good, but there's not a lot of give in the resin, so getting them onto the hub can be difficult. One thing you can do is you can drop the wheel into some warm water to soften the resin up a little bit. But still, getting these on is not as easy as the regular tires. Maybe I could have made the center opening a fraction bigger to make it a little bit easier, but I was afraid of it being loose, and I'd rather have to fight with it here as long as I can get them on without breaking anything, rather than having the tires be loose. That was the one thing I could not abide. So the wheels, I've got them soaking in a little bit of warm water, and then we're popping them on. In some cases, they were proving to be really difficult. And what I did is I just took a little pair of needle nose pliers after I got them kind of positioned, put the jaws over the top of the tire, and then tapped on the jaws with a hammer, and that just kind of knocked the wheel onto the hub. It's not a lot of force, but it worked really well because even after softening, a couple of these were really difficult. And I think that just comes down to the variations you can find in not only the wheels I made, but the hubs that are here. So, you know, you just have to be creative a little bit here. I could have run a round file through the hole of the tire. There was a lot of options. But again, like I said, I didn't want the thing to be loose. So this is the path I chose. There would be a lot of different ways you can handle this. The bottom line is get them on there. And honestly, they look amazing. I gave them a little bit more tread than I have done in some of the other things I've done, and it really stands out on this vehicle and looks pretty awesome. Okay, so this is a really rotten shot but because I was fighting with it, I kept moving closer and closer to my body and out of the camera frame. But you can see me just kind of tapping that wheel down a little bit, you know, really lightly. It's a little tiny hammer, and I've just got the jaws there so that they're really just pushing on the tire itself and nothing else. And just a couple little light taps and the wheel will pop on. It's definitely not the way I would like them to go on, but in my book, I think it's the lesser of the evils in, you know, that I don't want sloppy loose tires. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and start putting this sucker together. So we'll take the glass out of the onion saver, and it's looking pretty good. You can still see the crack in it a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to forge ahead, and we'll go ahead and just kind of plop this into the body. Then we can put the base on, hook the tab in the front end, and then drop it down over the post, and we'll screw this thing together. Now, so you don't have to have a resin 3D printer to make parts for this stuff. Here I'm using a canopy that I printed on my Monoprice Select Mini Pro, which is an FDM printer or a filament printer. And it came out pretty good. It needed a little bit of sanding, and then it was already black. I printed it out of black filament, but I went ahead after I sanded it. I put some flat black Tamiya paint on it. And I'm just going to glue it down with a little bit of white PVA glue, which is just essentially Elmer's glue. Alright, I think it looks amazing. We just need to let that white glue dry a little bit, and I think we can call this one done. So let's go ahead and take a look at the finished product. I hope you like it as much as I like it. Okay, there it is, the Alvis Stalwart BP Explorer. Now, it's not perfectly original. I liked the black top better. I could have painted it, but chose not to. The wheels are different and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think it looks pretty awesome. And it's a fun little model to do. But man, you know, it's hard enough to get a car that has 4 tires and have them all there. When you've got one that's got 6, it's almost impossible to find one that has all the tires. So 3D printing is really going to work out perfect for that. These wheels look amazing. They've got a nice hefty little tread pattern on them. They look great. And then, you know, you know how I am. I can't get away with some of the add-on details like the hinges and stuff. You know, I can't, I don't know. I guess I'm compulsive. I don't know. I guess so. Anyhow, I hope you really liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. Click the little bell. You'll be notified anytime I release a new video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I really appreciate you tuning in. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I have a lot of stuff to do today. A lot more cars to get to. A lot more fun things in store. Until next time, I hope you have an amazing day and go explore and find something new in your life. It's going to bring a lot of joy to you, so just get out there and find something and chase down your dreams. Alright, this is Paul. Until next time, be good.